Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of comparing the X-Men uh, to my life, where I go through an X-Men issue and also discuss the things that are going on in my life and my history and stuff like that. We're going to be doing X-Men, Uncanny X-Men 201. But before that, I want to show you some of my art that helps support the channel if you guys like the content. It's random access, which I send out to patrons at Alexander Turbin at patreon.com. It's a full size, full color, 12-page comic book every month for $2 a month. Or you can go to my website, alexanderturbin.com, and that has random access, and I've taken all of the different stories from random access and collected them into their own individual comics, like Cyrene the Cleric and Queller and stuff like that. You can also find Mutandis and the Forlorn and all of my content that I've done over the years at alexanderturbin.com. If you like the content, I wish you'd consider subscribing and hitting the bell notification and all that cool stuff. Maybe leaving a comment or a thumbs up or something like that. That would be really cool. So, it's Uncanny X-Men issue 201, and I am still at my dad's house. And this week I'd like to, let's look at the comic book first. One of the big reasons that I'm doing this is that, one, the X-Men have been in my life every month for 30 plus years, through the good and the bad. And two, when you go through living your life with having such a consistent thing in your life, you can kind of read what you read before, and everybody knows the comic book newsprint smell, and all I have to do is open this and the newsprint smell just wafts, I can't remember how you say that, into my nose, and it just brings me back to when I first read it. I think that probably happens for everybody. Everybody fully understands that very unique comic book smell. So it's issue 201, and this introduces, because at this point I didn't really know the different artists for comic books or X-Men or whatever. I just kind of I got the books and I liked it, and if I liked the art, then I just kind of enjoyed it. I didn't really know who was who, and it would take years of reading back issues and seeing other artists that I didn't like, and comparing them to the ones that I do like, and the type of styles that I really like. And this introduced Rick Leonardi to me, and I don't know if I understood at the time, I probably didn't, how much I enjoy his art, but he is really one of the most dynamic artists I've ever seen. He is unlike anybody else. Probably the closest I would say, if I compared him to somebody, would be Carlos Pacheco. But I see a lot of my my artwork in Rick Leonardi's, because I see something, I emulate it, and I pick out the things that I like, and I really enjoy his his cloth, his clothing, and his wrinkles in his clothing, and I really enjoy his dynamic rendering, really. This is kind of toned down, Rick Leonardi. I think he later on gets his really gets into his groove and starts showing his stuff. This is also the first issue where the X-Men play baseball, which is fantastic. It's one of my favorite parts of the X-Men, is not the big fight scenes. I don't remember the big fight scenes. They come and go. They have them every issue. It's no big deal. But the family, the core characters just playing some baseball and having fun and talking about their daily life. That really is what the X-Men is to me. And how can you not love Rogue? She's friggin' awesome. And Rick Leonardi's art is just amazing. And always, like always, it's Chris Claremont doing all of his Chris Claremont stuff, which is you know, deep into the characters, uncovering their wounds, really laying out everything bare for the reader. You know, you're getting insights into the characters. Look at that Storm. Look at those wrinkles in the legs and stuff. And so the book is mainly about who's going to lead the X-Men, and later on you find out that Madeline Pryor really is messing with Cyclops, and that's why he could not defeat Storm. I think I don't know about all that. I'm really kind of sad that they made Madeline into a bad guy. It's almost akin to Daenerys being turned bad from Game of Thrones, obviously. But I mean, it's a nice read. It's a nice it's kind of a mellow read compared to 201, which is very intense, very mutant chronicles oriented. It goes on about all the stereotypical it's you know, mutants as racism type thing, and it's really fantastic. And it ties up 199, which really in the last page it ties up 199, which is really cool because that's when I started reading it. So what was going on in my life? I'm still at my dad's and still being lonely and really not having friends, but I say that, but I did have friends. I had a friend who doesn't want to be named, so I'll just say his name is X. So he plays a huge role in some of the really pivotal things that happened to me before that, because at this time it's really I get a huge chunk of time to just devote to thinking about the things that have happened to me in my short life. I'm only like 12 or 13 at this time, but it gives me time to really reflect and categorize and go through the things that have happened to me and happened to my friend, my good friend at that time. But really, I kind of want to talk about my mom, because I've given you some insight into my dad, who's kind of a know-it-all, emotionally abusive person, and I think those are not mutually exclusive, because I think a lot of people that are emotionally abusive are know-it-alls, and they can't be wrong. They just cannot handle being wrong, and if they think they're wrong, then they'll lash out. And I probably get that a little bit, but I am very cognizant of it. And if I'm having a disagreement with somebody, I will always say, you know, maybe I'm wrong, maybe you're right, maybe I'm wrong. But which I think everybody should say that. But anyway, my mom, I'm not going to go into how they met and stuff on this episode. I'm going to go more into her personality and kind of what she's like, what she is like, and what she has been like. She's a character, very much in the vein of the movie Big Fish. Is that what it is? Where the dad is just a really big storyteller, and his son doesn't know what the reality is from his stories, and he goes through the whole movie trying to piece together the differences between what his dad says that are stories that are made up, fanciful stories, and what's actual reality. And at the end of the movie, you find that the dad dies Spoilers, it's like 20 years old. Go see it if you really want to. But the dad dies, and almost all of the people that he says in his stories they show up at his funeral, which is a really heartwarming part of the movie. And that really is my mom in a nutshell, because she has all of these fanciful stories that she has told and will tell and is telling. And she kind of she's a storyteller, and she makes a production of the story that she's telling. Making things a little bit bigger than they actually are. And who knows if what she's telling is the truth and if it's not. One thing that I know that is not true, because I don't believe in them, is so I was living in Highland Avenue, and what we had there was a basement that you could access from, it was like on a big hill, and you could access the basement from below the hill. And so it was weird. It was like a basement, but really not a basement. But then there was a first floor, and then a second floor, and then the attic, the attic was like a livable attic, where my dad obviously kept records and all of his other business ventures that he had. So one of the things my mom said about this creepy old house, and it's easy for her to understand how she got this. I guess that when they first bought the house, they rented it to a couple, or no, they bought the house, and previously a couple lived there, and it was the Browns, Mr. and Mrs. Browns. And the way my mom tells it is that Mr. Brown found out that Mrs. Brown was cheating on him, so he went up into the attic, and I can't remember how she tells it, whether she says he shot himself or whether he hung himself, or anyway, she says that he killed himself because of the infidelity that Mrs. Brown was having. I don't have any conclusive evidence that that happened. I do remember seeing old addressed letters to the Browns in my dad's house, which was Highland Avenue. And so I do know that there were Browns there. And I do know that that things my mom would say after that was a load of hooey. She would say that she would hear creaking in the house, which, it's a house on a hill. Of course it's going to friggin' creak. But she also said that they had a old grandfather clock, and none of its insides were in the clock, and it would ding at 12 o'clock. It would ding 12 times. Ding, ding, ding. I'm not going to do the 12 times. That would take too long. Anyway, she would say that all of these weird things would happen. I think she said that there was once voices at the bottom of the staircase at night. But my whole life until I was like 20, I believed this. And I believed it, but it's very odd because I was never afraid in that house. I was never, you would think that I would be scared to go down into the basement or up into the attic or anywhere, but that house was very warm, and you would never think that it was haunted at all or anything. But then when I was like 20 or 21, I remember going to visit them. They'd moved out into the country, and I was still living in town. And I was sitting there at the kitchen table, and I don't remember whether I was with my sister and my mom or who, but I was like, those haunted house stories were never real, were they? And this is like, I'm like 20 or 21 or something like that. And this realization just hit me like a ton of bricks. Like, you lied to me my whole life about a haunted house? And she, of course, has millions and millions of other stories. She was kind of a hippie and a beatnik, and she just has all of these different stories of her living in New York City and her living with her previous husband and all of these weird things happening. And I'm sure I'll get into some of those stories. But yeah, I was like, you lied to me about that? I can't believe that. And her response was, well, it could have been true. So I think that's what it was, what it is. She's just a good storyteller, because when she tells you one of these stories, you really believe it. She's watched my stepkids a few times, and she, will fill their heads with fanciful thoughts and stories, and they believe her just like I did. And I think it's a wonderful thing, and I would never change it at all. And I'm sure that's some of why I've become a comic book artist and writer, is because I want to create these stories as well. Um, so, and like Big Fish, some of these other stories that she has said, I found out were true. Like she said that when she was living in New York City with either with my dad or my sister's dad, that there was this big Viking that was living in the apartment that they were living in, or he was like a street musician or something, and he would do like Viking drumming. And she went into great detail about how he had these big horns, and his music was awesome, and I don't think she remembered his name. And so when I finally found out that she had made that stuff about the haunted house, I was like, none of this stuff is true. But then, like a year later, a couple years later, or something like that, I was in my dad's warehouse and looking at some of his records, and lo and behold, there was a Viking drummer exactly like she had described. Now, could she have seen that record? Yeah. And made up the whole thing and made it up from that record? Of course she could have. But I choose to believe that she knew this Viking drummer in her youth, and he later went on to produce a record of Viking drumming. I don't care if her stories are real or made up. I love them anyway. They're part of her character, and they're part of what makes her a wonderful person. And yeah, so that's one of the facets of my mom. And just to let you know that my childhood wasn't horrible. It had a lot of magical moments, mostly thanks to her. And so yeah, Rick Leonardi and Chris Claremont create another beautiful, beautiful book. Xavier is alive, and I actually know who he is, and I'm getting to know all of these characters. And these few books have been heavily read, and because I think just like everybody, as when you get into comic books, you read the crap out of all of your comics. You read them like 5, 6, 10 times, maybe even more. And that's part of magic of comic books. And that's kind of part of why I love them so much. But thanks for watching. And again, if you enjoyed this content, consider subscribing. And I'll see you again next week for more X-Men and more on my life story. See you later.